To say that Rocky Balboa is one of the greatest characters ever in the history of cinema would be a massive understatement. It's honestly hard to write an introduction to this video because what hasn't been said about a man when there's already a lot written about him? But I'm going to try my best anyway. When Rocky came out in 1976, no one expected that it would be one of the greatest films of all time, nor would anyone guess it would be followed by sequels and a franchise that has continued for nearly 50 years. Even the story leading up to the film's creation and how Stallone was down on his luck mirrors the events of the film in a way of life imitating art and deserves a video of its own someday on that subject alone. Rocky Balboa as a character has evolved from an underdog to champion to teacher and is just so relatable that I've genuinely not found a lot of people that don't like his character. This is why Rocky Balboa is a legend. Let's talk about his character traits, who he was based on, his teaching methods, and more. Something I'll touch on later in this video is that one of the reasons why Rocky was successful is that he had great support. Whether that was from Adrian, Paulie, Tony, or even Apollo. Having a great team is important, especially when you're fighting bosses or playing PvP, especially in Raid Shadow Legends. If I'm going to have the best champions on my team, these are 4 who I'd have at my table anytime for dinner. Gintoro, who excels at focusing on one enemy at a time and is perfect for DPS. Ursula the Mourner, an epic support character whose third skill revives all dead allies, fills the turn meters, then places defense and strength buffs. Whirlin Frost King, an exceptional defense champion with a variety of buffs and debuffs. And Sathalia, another amazing support champion that can be very useful in PvP because of her turn meter manipulation skills. Raid Shadow Legends also has a Dragon Egg Hunt from April 14th through May 15th. Download Raid Shadow Legends using the links below, copy your in-game player ID, and then head over to egghunt.plarium.com. If you find a hidden egg using your phone while scouring the dragon's lair, you'll be entered for a chance to win amazing in-game items and even real-life prizes, from legendary raid champions to Amazon gift cards with a total value of $20,000. Existing raid players can join in on the excellent fun as well. Go to egghunt.plarium.com and you'll find a special promo code that everyone can use to earn a small gift in-game. While I wasn't much of a mobile gamer, Raid Shadow Legends changed that for me, as now I'm logging in once a day and I'm hooked. It's a great way to refresh my mind in between video work. If you haven't started playing yet, now's the time. Use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get phenomenal bonuses, such as Epic Champion Talia from the Sacred Order faction, and other useful items such as energy refills, skill tome, and XP booster. You can find me under Stryfe the Warrior, which, yes, I know, but Stryfe the Warrior wouldn't fit in the character limit, okay? And if you're quick enough, join my clan. Hit the link in the description and I'll see you on the battlefield, hopefully beside me. And thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Let's do a recap on what we know about Rocky Balboa so far. I'm going to do my best to condense this story that is told in 8 films as much as possible, so bear with me. Feel free to skip ahead to avoid the recap, but be warned, you may miss some important details later on in the video. Robert Rocky Balboa grew up in Philly, eventually dropping out of high school. 10 years before the events of the first Rocky film, he would start training as a boxer at Mighty Mick's gym, though Mickey Goldmill never paid attention to him, unless you count Rocky Legends as canon, where Rocky was discovered after a street fight with Joe Zale by Mickey. Rocky does his best to make ends meet up until the events of the first film, including working as a loan collector for Gazzo, fighting in underground clubs, and even attempting to woo Adrian Panino, the sister of his best friend Paulie. Out of chance due to Mac Lee Green suffering an injury in his left hand, World Heavyweight Champion Apollo Creed picks Rocky Balboa to be his next opponent. With only 5 weeks to train, Rocky agrees to the fight and takes in Mickey as his trainer despite their history. Rocky manages to achieve his goal of going the distance with Creed, even knocking him down in the first round for the first time in Apollo's career. At the hospital, despite claiming there would be no rematch, Apollo publicly challenges Rocky to a rematch on the spot shortly after the fight. Rocky announces his retirement, eventually marrying Adrian and also expecting a child on the way, though he struggles to adjust to life after boxing with numerous career changes. Frustrated with the lack of options, Apollo's antagonistic taunts, and Adrian working part-time to help provide, Rocky agrees to a rematch, though does not have Adrian's blessing. Rocky initially gives up fighting due to the lack of focus and Adrian delivering Rocky Jr. prematurely and slipping into a coma, but after she recovers and tells Rocky to win, Rocky trains more determined than ever before. After a grueling match and refusing to stay down, Rocky delivers a massive left hook which takes him down along with Apollo, and barely beats the 10 count in the 15th round, becoming world champion and earning Apollo's respect as a fighter. Over the next few years going into the early 80s, Rocky defends his title with 10 straight victories and once again intends to retire. However, Clubber Lang, the #1 contender, insults Rocky and disrespectfully rizzes Adrian, prompting Rocky to accept his challenge. Despite Mickey refusing to involve himself as Rocky's trainer one last time, stating that he had been protecting Rocky to avoid further injury from his fights with Apollo, Rocky convinces him to do so, knowing he can't retire while knowing he hasn't fought the best. Before the match even starts, a preemptive scuffle ensues with Mickey suffering a heart attack as a result. Having this in the back of his mind and not taking his training seriously, Rocky is no match for Clubber, who knocks him out in the second round. Mickey passes away shortly thereafter, and Apollo visits Rocky, claiming that he lost for all the wrong reasons, and that the two can win the title back together. Still shaking that he was protected and upset over the loss of Mickey, Rocky doesn't have his heart in training at first until after a talk with Adrian, revealing he was afraid of not being who he really is and feeling responsible for Mickey's death. This inspires Rocky to take training seriously, getting back the eye of the tiger, and turning into a completely different fighter, throwing off Clubber Lang and resulting in Clubber being knocked out in the third round, with Rocky winning the title and making good on his promise to a third fight with Apollo Creed. In 1985, Ivan Drago, the world amateur champion from Soviet Russia, appears and his team asks for a match with Rocky Balboa. Apollo approaches Rocky and expresses his desire to fight Ivan, claiming that he wants to stave off Russian propaganda, though Rocky sees through this and asks what he's really fighting for. Rocky reluctantly agrees to be in his corner and trains Apollo, and during Apollo's match with Ivan, steps in to try to stop the match because of Ivan's superhuman strength. Apollo orders him not to stop the fight no matter what, and dies in the ring after a beatdown from Ivan. Rocky blames himself and vows to fight Ivan, even giving up his title in the process. Adrian disagrees and Rocky travels to train in Russia with Paulie and Tony, but Adrian eventually joins, giving Rocky her support. In the final round, Rocky manages to power through and defeat Ivan, avenging his best friend in the process. Shortly after, Rocky suffers complications from the fight, even mistakenly addressing Adrian as Mick. George Washington Duke confronts Rocky and asks him to challenge the current champion, Union Kane, as soon as he gets back from Russia, but Rocky holds off on accepting any new fights. The Balboas lose their fortune due to their accountant tricking Paulie into signing a power of attorney, using the fortune to invest in a real estate scheme that crashed. The mortgage also isn't paid, which forces the family to move back into the old neighborhood. Rocky reopens Mighty Mick's gym, and Adrian works at the pet shop, while Rocky Jr. struggles to fit in at school. Tommy Gunn seeks out Rocky as his trainer, and Tommy begins to grow impatient and not getting a title shot yet, with Duke swooping in and promising Tommy a shot if he breaks ties with Balboa. Despite Tommy and Duke causing the family to nearly split apart, Rocky makes amends with Adrian and Rocky Jr. and refuses Tommy's request for a match to prove that he isn't Rocky's puppet. However, Rocky changes his mind after Tommy strikes Paulie and defeats Tommy in a street fight. Rocky would go on to eventually open a restaurant named Adrian's, and life would go on until Adrian Balboa would pass away from cancer in 2002. 4 years later, Rocky reconnects with little Marie, a child from his neighborhood, and continues to run the restaurant while trying to mend his relationship with Rocky Jr. To combat his inner demons, Rocky applies for a boxing license again, which catches the eye of Mason Dixon, the current world champion's managerial team, who offer Rocky to fight Mason in a charity exhibition match, which really is a ploy to help Mason's image as he has not been tested as a true champion. Rocky eventually gains the blessing of his son and partners with Tony one last time as he trains for the fight. Despite having a disadvantage at first due to his age, Rocky holds his own against Mason, putting the beast in the basement to rest once and for all. In 2015, Rocky is approached by a young man, Adonis Creed, the illegitimate son of Apollo Creed, who asks Rocky to be his trainer. Rocky refuses at first, though offers to give Adonis some drills later on. After visiting Adrian and Paulie's, who passed away sometime after Rocky's fight with Mason, Graves, Rocky changes his mind and agrees to train Adonis, despite how bad it went with Tommy last time, on the condition that Adonis gives it his all. Rocky successfully trains Adonis and manages him to a win against Leo Sparino, though Adonis' status as a Creed, who had been going by the name of Johnson, the last name of his birth mother, gets out, attracting the attention of the world champion Ricky Conlan, who wants one last fight before he goes to prison. Rocky is against the idea of the fight, though agrees if Adonis chooses to pursue it. During training, Rocky becomes sick and is rushed to the hospital, where he finds out he has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He refuses to get treatment at first, and while he and Adonis initially fall out due to Adonis wanting him to undergo treatment, Adonis agrees to fight if Rocky agrees to fight. Adonis goes the distance with Conlan, and although he loses, he lives up to the name of Creed and proves he isn't a mistake. 3 years later, Adonis moves up weight classes to heavyweight, still being managed by Rocky, and defeats Danny Wheeler, winning back his Mustang in the World Championship. Ivan Drago resurfaces and confronts Rocky at Adrian's, making his intentions known that Victor, his son, will break Adonis. Rocky advises Adonis to not fight Victor, as he fears what happened to Apollo will happen to Adonis. Adonis goes on to fight Victor under Little Duke's help, though is knocked out, resulting in the match ending in a disqualification as Adonis was on his knee. Rocky attempts to make amends with Adonis in the hospital, but Adonis doesn't forgive him. However, Marianne reaches out to Rocky, and Rocky reconciles with Adonis, who feared that he couldn't live up to his father's legacy. Rocky becomes Amaras, Adonis' newborn daughter's godfather, and trains Adonis in a grueling regimen to prepare for the fight. Rocky coaches Adonis to a victory when Ivan throws in the towel for Victor and states that Adonis' time is now. At the advice of Adonis, he visits Rocky Jr. in Vancouver, meeting his grandson Logan for the first time. While Rocky is absent in Creed 3, his legacy is still there. The fight between himself and Apollo is an idea that Adonis presents to Felix Chavez, current world champion, to fight Dame Anderson, as everyone loves an underdog story. Even when Adonis steps out of retirement before his fight with Dame, he recounts the advice Rocky once told him: one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. Let's talk about why Rocky is a great character and the positive qualities he possesses. It'll be easier to break this down in chronological order of his appearances in the films. In the first film, he's an extremely relatable everyman. He doesn't want life to pass him by and does what he can to make ends meet, whether that's fighting in underground clubs or collecting for Gazo. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but I think we can all relate when we think back to either the first job we ever had or a job we didn't really like, but did so because we needed the money or until something better came along. Even though it's hinted later on in the franchise, both in the original cuts and deleted scenes, that he didn't have the best relationship with his father, it's clear that he still cares about his family, whether they are still living or deceased, as he has pictures of his childhood and his parents on his mirror. It could be speculated that he dropped out of school for this reason to help support his family, as in the deleted scene in Creed, he mentioned witnessing his father dying at presumably a young age. Rocky is caring, even to those he doesn't know or knows very well, whether it's a homeless man on the street that he brings inside so they can be warm, or little Marie, despite her indifference towards him. It should go without saying that the person he cares for the most in the film is Adrian, as he's respectful and polite towards her, especially asking to kiss her in the apartment. Even with his bad jokes and attempts to woo her, he'll do what he can to make her happy, whether it's bribing the ice rink worker or instinctively protecting her from the debris when Paulie breaks the table. In the meat freezer, he also insists that Paulie not talk dirty about his sister, defending her honor. After fighting Apollo, he didn't care that he lost the fight. He went the distance and cared about Adrian, calling her out so she can come to him and they celebrate. Another lovable quality Rocky has is that he's humble. He respects Apollo as the champion, defending him from Andy's claim, hinting that he possibly followed Apollo's career this entire time, mentioning that he took his best shot and became the champ. This is also reflected when he talks to Jurgens for the first time, as he initially declines the offer to fight Apollo, instead assuming he was being hired as a sparring partner for Apollo Creed. Rocky doesn't consider himself in the same category as Apollo, as he's nervous when considering the offer a second time after Jurgens convinces him to take the fight with the Apollo, and also confides to Adrian that he knows he can't beat him, but wants to go the distance to prove that he's not another bum from the neighborhood. It also goes without saying that Rocky is an underdog, and that is why his character is so endearing in this film. He knows what he can and can't do, but is going to attempt what many others couldn't do, go the distance with Creed, and also knock him down in the first round. Rocky takes his training seriously, even using unusual methods to train, though this also proves how much power he really had in his fists. People believed that he could do it. Adrian, Paulie, Mickey, and even Gazo, who would not only help fund his training, but also give Rocky money for his date with Adrian. I think another quality that isn't talked about enough is Rocky's ability to forgive those who wronged him. He was hesitant to accept Mickey's help at first, as Mick berated him, never cared to train him, and is only offering to help now because he has a shot at the world title. After his rant, Rocky is just as quick to forgive and train under Mickey. Rocky also forgave Paulie, despite the comments he made about Adrian, threatening to break his arms and throw him out of the house. You can see that Rocky held back against Paulie, and also sent a message in the meat locker that he wasn't to be messed with, and agreed to let Paulie advertise in exchange for a robe. I think this would also explain why Paulie is so loyal to him later on in the films, even going so far as to try to stop Hulkamania before it even begins. In Rocky 2, Rocky still maintains his humbleness, is not interested in a rematch, and feels he accomplished everything he needed by going the distance with Apollo. He instead focuses on building a future, marrying the love of his life, Adrian, who loved him for who he was before he got the title shot. He repays the favor by trying to treat her to the high life and to have nice things, buying her a new coat, buying a car so they can get around, and buying her a new watch, and even one for Paulie. He also buys a house so they can prepare for the future and is thrilled when they have a child on the way. However, these good times don't last as he struggles to adjust to life after boxing, but he tries anyway. He puts himself in an uncomfortable position to try to make it by doing commercials and gains his self-respect when realizing that he's doing what he deems dishonest work. He temporarily has a job at the meat factory thanks to Paulie and is proactive about wanting to start work now so he can provide. Even when he's fired, he finishes out the day making what he can and sells the car to get rid of an unnecessary expense. Though he first protests against it as he wants to be the provider, Rocky reluctantly agrees to let Adrian work part-time and looks to fighting once again as a way to make bread. Mickey and Adrian both don't support this choice, but you can't knock Rocky's passion as he makes an offer to Mickey that he needs to be around it and will do what he can to be in the gym to help. You can tell he's thankful as he has tears in his eyes when he thanks Mick and is choked up about not being able to fight anymore. However, there's one person who still believes in him and advises him that he should pursue this dream, Gazzo. Gazzo points to the wall and reminds Rocky of the hunger that he once had. Rocky accepts his destiny, and although Adrian doesn't want him to fight, he tells her to don't ask me to stop being a man. He wants more for his family and doesn't want to get by, and the fire is ignited when Mickey believes he should shut Apollo's mouth. When Adrian goes into a coma, he puts a stop to his training and doesn't leave her side until she wakes up, to which she gives her blessing to fight Apollo and to win. Rocky takes these workouts to the next level, getting stronger, faster, and more in shape, even more determined to win the championship. Rocky also gains the support of the city as he trains, and proves that he has a determination when he tells Mickey that he ain't going down no more, and uses every ounce of his strength to stand on his feet until the final round. Rocky thanks those who believe in him, still respecting Apollo, and has finally proved that he wasn't a fluke. I think one of the more endearing qualities that Rocky has in this film is his sense of humor, as it makes his character that much more lovable. In the third film, Rocky is on top of the world. While he's slightly less relatable in this film in comparison to Rocky 1 and 2, I think that's understandable, as the film focuses on dealing with your success and asks an important question: do you stay hungry or become complacent? Rocky moves Mickey in, and although Paulie is jealous of this, he nonetheless bails out Paulie, takes care of him, and doesn't let Adrian know about the troubles he's having, even giving Paulie a job in his boxing camp. During the opening montage, we can see that Rocky finally got help with his reading and is possibly more educated, as he's done tons of commercials up to this point. His fight with Thunderlips for charity also ties back to his desire of giving back in Rocky 2, as he mentioned he'd like to buy a statue for his church. Rocky is also a great father, showing Rocky Jr. a lot of love, and is recognized for his efforts by the city, as they created a statue based on Rocky's likeness. Rocky still defends Adrian's honor from Clubber Lang, even if it means he was outclassed. We can also admire his willingness to fight Clubber, as he doesn't want to retire knowing that he hasn't fought the best of his generation. What makes Rocky 3 one of my favorite films of the franchise is the journey that Rocky embarks on while training under Apollo. He at first doubts his abilities, though still open-minded enough to retrain himself in Apollo's style of fighting. He blames himself for being protected and responsible for what happened to Mickey, but thanks to a conversation with Adrian, she reminds him that he made the best choices and he needs to be able to confront his fears in order to move forward. Rocky not only evolves as a fighter as a result of this, but also becomes a better man. He now trains even knowing that he might lose and gives it his all in the fight with Clubber, which results in him winning back his title. The fact that he is also now best friends with his former rival Apollo is also a highlight of this film. The foundation of this relationship would also come back to help Rocky in his old age thanks to him training Adonis. In Rocky 4, Rocky celebrates his longevity with Adrian and calls back to when he mentioned that she'd never get rid of him. Although he's unsure of Apollo's true intentions to fight Ivan Drago, he nonetheless supports him and reluctantly agrees to train Apollo, while also saying that Apollo needs to fight his inner demons. Even before Apollo's fight, he still keeps himself humble when his name is called, despite still being the world champion. Seeing that his friend is in great danger, he attempts to stop the fight, but promises Apollo he won't. There's some conflict as he wants to throw the towel to save his friend, but Apollo tells him no at least twice. There's still some regret Rocky shows at the funeral, as he realized what his friend was talking about in regards to when it's all over, and states that Apollo was the best. He also vows to make this right by giving Ivan the match he wanted, vacating his championship in the process, reminds Adrian that all the material possessions that they have ain't everything. In a nice callback to Rocky 2, he states he can't change because he's a fighter, and goes to Russia despite Adrian not believing in him. However, Adrian eventually comes back around, and along with Tony and Paulie, all three believe in him as he keeps a sharp mind and focus, training harder than he ever has before. While I've previously said that this film starts to jump the franchise a little bit in terms of Ivan Drago and the film overall, there are some notable classic qualities that this film does have from earlier films. Rocky is willing to go toe-to-toe with an opponent who outclasses him and uses his anger as fuel as he's trading punches. Rocky does the impossible and cuts Ivan, shaking his opponent to his core, and begins to win the crowd over despite them booing him out of the building when he first arrived. Ivan can't even believe that Rocky keeps getting up like Apollo did in the first film, and Rocky gets up first in his corner before one of the rounds to send a message to Ivan that he's not going down. The speech that Rocky gives in the end also delivers a message. People can change who they are if they try. There are some notable aspects of Rocky's portrayal in the director's cut that are worth mentioning. Rocky is more mindful of trying to appease both Adrian and Apollo, and promises to the former that he'll do what he can to prevent things from getting out of hand. Rocky's pleas to stop the fight are more true to what he would have really said given the friendship he has with Apollo, nearly choking up by saying, "Don't do this to me." The funeral scene is also a more appropriate change for Rocky's character, as he tearfully mentions that Apollo believed in him and gave him a break when no one else would, and he feels responsible for letting this all happen to Apollo. We also see why he's so willing to give up the title. He's determined to avenge his friend and cares more about that than the championship, as he goes against the Boxing Commission's wishes. As I've also mentioned before in previous videos, while Rocky V is one of the weaker films of the franchise, it at least makes an honest attempt to bring Rocky and his family back to basics. After the grueling match with Ivan Drago, it's clear that Rocky wants to spend more time with his family, as we see more of the development of the relationship between himself and Rocky Jr. Though he understands the risk to his health, he wants to continue to fight just like Rocky II, but reluctantly agrees to keep Adrian happy. However, he tells his son that the fight isn't over until the bell rings. As Rocky reminisces in Mighty Mix Gym, he remembers the talk Mickey had with him before one of his fights with Apollo, and how he told him to keep fighting no matter the odds. This inspires him to reopen the gym, presumably in honor of Mickey, who taught him how to keep fighting. Although Tommy fails to impress him the first time, he does his best to let him down easy and to let him know he has potential, perhaps because Tommy reminds him of a younger Rocky when he started fighting. He also gives Tommy another chance and moves him into the house for a while, going so far to give Tommy the same trunks he wore in honor of Apollo Creed. Because Paulie stood up to Tommy, Rocky would accept the challenge of the street fight in defense of Paulie, and even when he knocked Tommy down the first time, would go on to say that he loved Tommy, but that he blew it. Rocky Balboa, the last of the films focused on him as the main character, shows a much older Rocky doing what he can to make it through the days ahead. Despite not having fought in years, he still exercises to keep himself active. 11 years earlier, he opened a restaurant named after Adrian, adorned with pictures of her, his family, and his fights over the years, often telling patrons these stories when they come to dine as well. Though the relationship between Rocky and Robert is strange, he does what he can to try to mend it, as he's the last family member he has alive. Every year, he makes it a tradition to visit different places that have significance, such as his old apartment, the pet shop Adrian worked at, and the torn down ice rink. Rocky re-meets little Marie, who now has a son named Steps, and is nice to them both, despite how she treated him in the past. He offers the two to come by and eat at his restaurant, fixing their porch light, and gives little Marie a new job as the hostess, claiming she's wasting her potential. Rocky adopts Punchy, as the dog reminds him of himself. Despite his age and resting, he still has a chance. In terms of dealing with the beast in the basement, he decides to pursue boxing again, with encouragement from Paulie, little Marie, and Tony, and also wants to defy the odds, showing that he can still fight. Despite all the insults and being called a Balboasaurus, he doesn't let it get to him, giving Robert Jr. the iconic "it's not how hard you can hit" speech, and that he needs to live for himself. Robert realizes this and becomes part of Rocky's camp. With all the people he needs in his corner, he trains hard and is respectful to Dixon, also gaining respect from him in the final round and telling Mason that he's a great champion. Just like the first film, it was never about winning. It was simply about giving it your all and not living with any regrets. I think one of the best parts of the film too is that Angie, the woman that tried to scam Rocky at the beginning of the film, gains respect for him as well. It's a shame some of the deleted scenes were cut from this film, as Rocky is the one comforting Paulie storming out of the restaurant as he breaks down about his sister and gives him credit for stepping into the ring. Paulie also returns this favor later as he encourages Rocky to keep fighting when his sparring doesn't go well. In the Creed films, the most endearing thing about his appearance is his relationship with Adonis. Staying humble, Rocky admits that Apollo won the secret third fight they had. He does his best to protect Adonis, respecting his wishes to fly under the radar and make a name for himself. When Adonis moves in, Rocky is polite and invites Bianca to come over when they're not training. Trying his best to keep good spirits and to keep Adonis moving, Rocky wakes him up at 5 a.m. every day by dancing to his favorite songs. The two develop a friendly enough relationship where Rocky does the speed back with Adonis and jokingly interrupts his rhythm. Rocky misses his family and states that Adonis has a future, admitting that he won't fight cancer. However, after talking to Adonis and advising him to forgive Apollo for being caught in the shadow and knowing what it's like to be abandoned, possibly mentioning either his father or Mickey, Rocky visits Adrian and Paulie again in a deleted scene where he wants to be in Adonis's corner and will do his best to fight this battle. He states that while he messed up with Robert, Adonis is the only person he has right now. Rocky helps Adonis and Bianca reunite, coaching that Conlan is in his way and he just needs to get him out. Rocky tells Adonis to knock Conlan down and that he loves him because he's a Creed. When Ivan Drago visits Rocky to personally challenge Adonis, he warns Ivan to back off as they put strays away around here and that he isn't afraid of him. He attempts to mend his relationship with Adonis after his first fight with Victor, though Adonis will have none of it. However, Rocky later confides to Adonis that he doesn't know his own grandson and hasn't talked to his son in years, stating that he doesn't want Adonis to make the same mistakes he did. He encourages him to be a better man. Adonis eventually helps Rocky with another battle, reuniting with Robert and meeting his grandson Logan for the first time. Let's also talk about Rocky as a teacher and mentor. We could argue the first time he tried to teach something was to little Marie, who didn't listen, and it would go on to reflect in her life later on, notably in the alternate cut of Rocky V and in Rocky Balboa. Over different films in the franchise, notably Rocky IV through Rocky Balboa, Rocky Jr. learned some sound advice in different films. When asking his father to teach him how to fight, Rocky states that he fights so his son doesn't have to. Before leaving for Russia, the two have a conversation about his upcoming fight with Ivan Drago. Rocky gives some sound advice. While he is afraid, the other side of him tells him that he wants to keep moving forward, and going one more round, even when you think you can't, makes all the difference. Director's cut also expands on this when he tells Robert to do things for yourself and live for yourself. Rocky tries his best to be a better father than his own father was, hinting to Tommy to at least he had an old man around to knock out. He teaches Robert to watch out for scammers and deception, though ironically would not follow this advice in terms of Tommy and George Washington Duke. Rocky also recognizes the errors of his ways earlier in the film, making amends with both Adrian and Rocky Jr., even passing down the same cufflink Mickey gave him to Robert. Rocky is successful in getting his son on the right track and preventing him from hanging out on the block like little Marie. Rocky's first true student is Tommy Gunn, a young fighter from Oklahoma who seeks him out for training. As mentioned before, he doesn't take him in until after Tommy spars with Vincent, to which Tommy apologizes profusely and expresses his admiration for Rocky. Despite the family dealing with hard times, Rocky moves Tommy in and takes him under his wing. In the first fight he has with Rocky in his corner, he teaches Tommy that he can control fear like fire and to not let it eat him up. Rocky tries his hardest to be like Mickey was, insisting that Tommy is a hero and he'll be an angel on his shoulder. Rocky also tells Tommy to use his heart and to keep moving forward. Alongside this, Tommy learns everything Rocky knows, down to the same exercises he would train for his career. One of the key techniques Rocky teaches Tommy is to slip the jab, something he learned from both Mickey and Apollo, though in this context, this is more towards what Mickey taught him, as Rocky is doing his best to emulate Mickey's teaching style. When George Washington Duke comes between the two, Tommy is warned of deception, but refuses to listen to Rocky as he's focused on a title shot. Despite Tommy having great potential and two hands and a fighting chance to become world champion, it comes crashing down after the street fight with Rocky. While Rocky did his best to teach Tommy and keep him on the right path, I think it's also worth noting that he was also trying to get out of the hole he was in, and this may have gotten in between the two. This experience would leave a bad enough taste in Balboa's mouth that he wouldn't take on another student until many years later. While still running Adrian's, Rocky meets Adonis for the first time and refuses to train him at first, but feeling the guilt of Apollo's death and remembering the many favors Apollo did for him, he offers Adonis to stop by any time he needed help. Admiring the young man's persistence that his father also had, Rocky gives Adonis basic drills and makes it clear that he doesn't want to train anyone anymore. However, Rocky has a change of heart after visiting Adrian and Paulie and promises to train Adonis as long as he gives it his all. Rocky truly embraces his role as Mick and doesn't let up on Adonis just because he's Apollo's son, teaching him old school methods and pushing him past his limits. He teaches Adonis the true lesson behind shadowboxing, where it's a battle against oneself, and teaches him to keep getting up even when he doesn't want to. Like Tommy, Rocky also moves in Adonis for a time, taking him to the Front Street Gym to train for his fight against Leo Sparino. As a surprise, he has a whole team ready for him to teach him to fight like a Philadelphia fighter, Rocky style. Though there is some friction at first, Rocky reminds him that he needs to listen while he teaches, as that's the only way he'll learn. He also teaches a mantra that Adonis carries with him from that point forward: one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. Rocky even trains with Adonis on the speed bag, teaching him hooks and how to build raw strength to be able to take it to Sparino. Perhaps one of the best things about being Adonis' teacher is that he learned from the moves that Apollo used on him, which gives Adonis an edge as the student knows these combos will work. While initially against the fight for Conlan, Rocky stays in Adonis' corner when he accepts the fight. After Adonis gives it some thought and they had an initial discussion about Rocky's diagnosis, Rocky agrees to fight as long as Adonis fights too. Even during his treatment, Adonis stays by his side and learns all that he can from Rocky. Perhaps reflecting on his previous experience with Clubber Lang, he tells Adonis to not let Conlon get in his head and to fight for himself, not for his father or the name. When the events of Creed 2 roll around, Rocky is still at Adonis' side when he wins the championship. Although not related to boxing and more so when Adonis wants to propose to Bianca, Rocky gives the sound advice that his heart should do the talking. When Ivan Drago partners with Buddy Marcel to goad Adonis into a match, Rocky refuses to train Adonis and tries to talk him out of taking the fight, as they're doing it for the wrong reasons and he doesn't want Adonis hurt like Apollo was. Rocky still deeply cares about Adonis as he's still coaching while watching the fight. After the fight, while Adonis tries to get out of the dark space he's in, Marianne reaches out to Rocky, who states that Adonis was right in teaching him about smart thinking, and asks what he was really fighting for. As the two reconcile, Rocky is also there for Adonis when Amara is born, becoming her godfather. In a tribute to his friend, as he gave the eulogy in the deleted scene, Rocky trains Adonis in the desert, as Spider Rico used to train there and once remarked that's where fighters are reborn. Putting Adonis through a grueling regimen, the student now stands toe-to-toe with Victor and wins, with Rocky notably convincing that Adonis is indeed dangerous. Rocky training Adonis is what makes the Creed films so great. Apollo had given him a break as a boxer and also helped him win back the title. For Rocky to pay back that favor and to bond with Adonis not only almost as a father-son or uncle-nephew relationship, but the two also learn from each other and use what they've learned from the other to fight their own battles. Adonis and Rocky working together is everything Rocky and Tommy should have been. Adonis may have had an easier life than some, not accounting for his years before living with Marianne, but he chose to take the fighter's life when he didn't have to, and that may have also led to Rocky respecting him and agreeing to train him in the first place. Who exactly is Rocky Balboa based on? The first film was notably based on the fight between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner that took place on March 24, 1975. At the time, Wepner had fought and lost to fighters such as George Foreman and Sonny Liston, and many thought his days were numbered. However, during the fight, he shocked the crowd by knocking down Ali, though stepping on his foot, in the 9th round. Ali would go on to retain the championship by TKO in the 15th. Stallone would also borrow motivation from his life at the time, which he would also do for subsequent films, as he was down on his luck and even had to sell his dog. Once he sold the script, he was able to buy his dog back, Butkus, as seen in Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. Another notable inspiration would be Rocky Marciano by namesake and fighting style. Others have also speculated Joe Frazier as a possibility, another boxer from Philadelphia with similar training methods and a notable victory against Muhammad Ali, who Apollo Creed is based on, and Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull, in terms of inner-city Italian roots, the ability to take punishment, and his rivalry with Sugar Ray Robinson, which mirrors that of Rocky and Apollo. The biographical elements that Rocky 2 was based on is that the heroes of yesterday are quickly forgotten, as Stallone felt forgotten as well, due to Paradise Alley and Fist underperforming at the box office. Rocky 3 was about how unreal things had gotten with Rocky's life, notably the famous success, and how out of touch Rocky is now that he's champion, something Stallone experienced at the time since he was at the height of his fame. As some of you had commented on Why My Clubber Lang Was Dangerous video, the two fights between Rocky and Clubber mirrored the fight between Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran in 1980. Although Leonard lost the title the first time, he changed strategies the second time, staying off the ropes, using his jab, moving around the ring, and evaded Duran's punches. Some notable inspirations for the Thunderlips match would be Chuck Wepner vs. Andre the Giant in 1976, where Andre threw Wepner out of the ring, Muhammad Ali vs. Antonio Inoki, also in 1976, and the brief encounter Ali had with Gorilla Monsoon, who put Ali in the airplane spin. Rocky IV's fight between Rocky and Drago, as many of you had commented in my Why Ivan Drago is a Tragic Character video, was based on the notable fight between Joe Louis and Max Schmeling in 1936. Rocky V talked about the dangers of boxing, as mentioned in my Tommy Gunn video, and Rocky Balboa was about Stallone dealing with the aftermath of decisions of those who didn't have his best interests at heart, hence the character Mason Dixon, and the decline of boxing at that time. As I mentioned briefly in my Mason Dixon video, Mason Dixon vs. Rocky Balboa is based on George Foreman vs. Michael Moorer, though Foreman won the fight and the title. Let's talk about Rocky's fighting style and why he was able to win those fights. Though he would later have his boxing style refined by Mickey, Rocky was a brawler in the first film. He had a very basic style and lacked proper defense, but he had raw power and determination. As Mickey mentioned to Al Savani, Rocky went to the body like no one else, and this proved deadly for Apollo, who had broken ribs after the fight. He also refused to go down, even shocking Apollo, and something that Tony would comment on in Rocky 2. The man kept coming after you. Speaking of which, in Rocky 2, Rocky would improve on his boxing. He would be quicker and stronger, while also slightly improving on his defense. One of his biggest weaknesses, however, was his bad right eye, something that's hinted at early in the film while he played stickball and struggled to read in the filming for commercials, though this was also due to his illiteracy. Rocky also learns how to fight right-handed and is more resilient in the second fight with Apollo and has better conditioning, as he doesn't seem as tired in the 13th round. While Apollo still evades a lot of his attacks, Rocky is able to trap Apollo in the corner, shoving him there and work on the body, possibly re-aggravating the broken ribs Apollo suffered in the first fight. Although he claims in Creed that time beat Apollo, what it came down to was his determination. He tells Mickey, "I ain't going down no more," and does just that. Endures all the punishment that Apollo throws, while also using every last ounce of his strength to stay on his feet. You can tell Apollo has had enough as both struggle to beat the 10 count, and he sees that there's no way he wants it more than Rocky does, thus conceding defeat. In the third film, Rocky is in the best shape of his life at that point. He's conditioned to last longer than before, and he even adopts the cross guard, something Dame is noted for using in Creed 3. There's a possibility that he had even more surgery to fix his right eye, as that is no longer a problem in Rocky 3. Rocky's strength has also increased, as he's able to pick up Thunderlips and throw him out of the ring. Though he moves a little quicker, he also doesn't take as many punches to the face until he fights Clubber Lang. Thanks to Apollo's training, Rocky becomes a completely different fighter. He jabs from the outside, evades punches with ease, moves in and out, and also allows Lang to exhaust himself before attacking him with flurries of combinations. Rocky even uses mind games against Clubber, taunting him and making him angry so he can make mistakes. In Rocky 4, Rocky almost reverts entirely to his basic style, putting himself through a grueling regimen to get himself in even better shape, though this method works as he's able to trade punches with Ivan Drago. Rocky uses the anger he feels inside because of Apollo's death and uses it as a way to focus on Drago, shaking him to his core when he's cut and being able to knock him out. In Rocky 5, there's not much of a difference in fighting style from 4, though Rocky again uses the same jabs from the outside that Mickey and Apollo taught him. He uses his street smarts to trip Tommy and is able to grab and slam Tommy as well. Because of his old age, arthritis, and calcium deposits, Rocky has to rely purely on his raw power. Though Mason rocks him a few times, he's still able to trade punches and go toe-to-toe, despite not having fought in nearly 2 decades and is in phenomenal shape considering that he's 60 years old. Rocky is still able to trap Mason in the corner and wail on Dixon's body. Though I briefly touched on it before, the reason why he won his fights come down to a few qualities. The first would be his iron chin. Rocky could take some of the best punches from world-class fighters and not be knocked down very easily. Combined with his heart and determination, this makes Rocky extremely deadly, as again, Tony said it best, the man kept coming after you. Rocky's heart and status as an underdog are what made him legendary. He wasn't the best or quickest fighter, but he would win purely because he wanted to win more than others did. That being said, Rocky is also known for his power. When he started breaking the ribs of dead cows in the meat locker, this caught the attention of Tony, warning Apollo that Balboa meant business. The fact that he was able to get himself in better shape each time also attests to his ability to adapt to opponents, and having notably 3 great trainers throughout his career also kept him at the top of his game. Here are my final thoughts on Rocky Balboa and what we can expect from him in the future. As I've said before, Rocky is perhaps one of the best characters in cinema ever. His heart, something that his opponents lacked, was so inspiring as he struggled to overcome many obstacles throughout his life. That's something a lot of people can get behind and admire, which makes him relatable. And let's be honest, how many times have you heard the "it's not about how hard you hit" speech as long as you've been alive? The fact that Stallone came up with such iconic dialogue as an older iteration of his character really speaks volumes to how genius of a writer he is. Rocky is also a rare character in the sense that you've seen many parts of his life as he's evolved, from an underdog to world champion to trainer to boxing as an older man and a trainer again. Not many franchises get to experience that type of longevity, and to think that Rocky has been around for nearly 50 years as a character is insane to think about. Stallone has expressed interest in returning to the franchise for Creed 4, and honestly, I hope he does. I think Creed 2 was a great send-off for Rocky as it wrapped up his character arc nicely. I'm not wanting to necessarily see Rocky die of old age on screen, but it would be at least nice to see him interact with Amara and Adonis, now that Adonis himself retired as a fighter, at least until the events of Creed 3. Here's hoping that Stallone returns, but for now, I think Rocky has truly gone the distance, and then some. Let me know what you guys think down below. What do you love about Rocky Balboa? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it, subscribe, share it with your friends, and comment, as these all help my channel grow. Be sure to check out and subscribe to my gaming channel. I'm trying to get this channel to 1,000 subscribers, and supporting this channel also helps me support my main channel. Keep up with me on my socials via Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we'll catch you around next time.